The Murdoch press has been incessantly advertising this documentary that went on Sky that was called Men in the Mirror, and there was a little lightning bolt down the side that had Malcolm Turnbull on one side and Kevin Rudd on the other. I think that the overall general theme is that they're the same guy. Can you tell from the advertising? Probably, because it's pretty overt. So, I went and watched it, and I think that from the length, you will see that I have a special guest. That's right, it's Kim Beazley, Australia's favourite small plane history enthusiast. Yeah, this one could probably be considered a medium plane really, so I'm not going to delve into that one. We are here a day after Armageddon for your career, Kevin Rudd, which was when Sky News dropped its damning piece that I think is the height of Chris Kenny's career. Yours laying all of the groundwork needed for the Paris Accord, him making this hour-long special on Sky News that dropped 8 p.m. Sunday. I've seen little bits and bobs of it. You haven't seen any of it. So before we start, how scared out of 10 are you? 1 being horrified, 10 being shitting yourself.
I'm 11. I sense that my career is on a knife edge because there's such a crack team out there. It's called the Murdoch Assassination Squad. And I'm fearful and I'm trembling about the expose of all that shit in my character.
Yeah. You're a man coming to your execution.
That's true.
Any last words?
Just a deep sense of foreboding, but just a tinge of excitement to see how bad it's going to be, given I haven't seen this yet.
All right, and with that, let's roll.
Did you bring popcorn?
No, it's your house.
This is Sky News, Australia's news channel.
Real news, honest views.
The Liberal Party is not about fact, it is about the politics of fear. Every step you've...
Have you ever seen MasterChef?
No, but Teresa's a big fan of MasterChef, and I've sort of glanced at it as we, as I walk over to make myself a cup of coffee.
Right.
You think
just to fill you in on the last 15 years, they've obviously got the editor to do that. That's why they've got that really cheap dramatic music where they've gotten, I don't know, generic Hans Zimmer.
That is MasterChef music, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's kind of and then they had the pan shot of all the ovens. Is that right?
Yeah.
With everyone looking panicked with their bowls of goo, which they're about to make into stuff.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah. So this is as serious as someone melting ice cream. That's what they're setting in, you know?
I got it. Okay. Now I'm really interested.
Had the potential to be 2 of the greatest prime ministers this country's ever had.
Is your brother a good man?
He was always fascinated with the rise and fall of empires.
Empires?
Empires. That's their big explosive piece. Not to spoil anything for you that's coming up, but that really seems to be one of their big got you with a left hook.
Look, I confess that I used to read books, but I've stopped.
Well, you know, the important thing is that you did.
It was a nerdy thing to do. I used to read books, and I used to study. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you did know what an empire was.
Yeah, that's right. There was a British one, there was a Roman one, and there were a few others as well.
Well, it's good that you're getting this out before it goes, just pleading guilty.
Well, it's important to clean up your act, you know, and have a moment of personal self-expiation, so that's what I'm doing.
Well, they said that you're not capable of doing that.
Self-reflection's the name of the game. You know, it's part of post-political therapy.
Right, okay.
His private secretary said, "You really need to see Malcolm, he needs to see you." And he just blasted me. He'd won, but he wanted to rub it in.
I really hate that tone. I've heard it so many times in all the previews, but he wanted to rub it in. Dude, being a voice actor isn't your strong point. In fact, when we go through his career, nothing seems to be his strong point. But, you know, dramatic is not what these people do. Having said that, they did put in the MasterChef music, and I am blown away.
Yeah, I'm still taken by the MasterChef stuff. I think it's good. I just want to see what they cook, because that's what's kind of got me intrigued. It's good.
Yes.
So far, so good.
Well, you can even cook popcorn.
They are both brought down by their own character flaws.
Sometimes there's not
big gap between genius and narcissism.
Disarming. There's a lot.
What do you say to that? How similar are you to Malcolm Turnbull?
No, what I love is Peter Beattie opining on the notion of narcissism. That's classic Dracula at the blood. That's classic Dracula at the blood bank stuff.
Before we go into it further, they seem to be linking you two together in terms, I think that their overarching argument is that neither of you have any ideology and you just entered politics to get to the top.
Well, one of the great devices which Kenny has deployed with absolute dishonesty in this piece is there's a clip of the first line of my maiden speech to the Parliament. And that line is as follows: politics is about power.
Politics is about power.
And what Kenny deliberately has done is excise the second sentence, which says, and it is about whether that power is exercised for the many or the few. That's what they excise. And he does it deliberately. And he knows, therefore, his presentation of that clip is a lie. And that's because Kenny is a liar. Politics is about power, spooky music, spooky music, spooky music. As opposed to the proposition, which is politics is about power, it's about the power of the state, and it's about whether that power is used for the many or the few. They're the first three sentences of my first speech in Parliament.
And what do you say to their accusation that Malcolm Turnbull could have entered the Labor Party, which quietly I think he could have, but, and you could have entered the Liberal Party just as easily?
When I joined the Labor Party in 1981, it came probably about 10 years after I first started attending Young Labor meetings in Nambour. The Labor Party had been out of office in Queensland for about 20 years by that stage. By the time I went to work for Goss, out of office for 32 years. And when I joined the Labor Party in the 1980s, we'd been out of office federally as well. So if the whole notion was careerism and joining a political party in order to, you know, jump on the coattails of some successful political operation, joining the Queensland branch of the Labor Party back then, when we had the arse out of our pants, was scarcely, shall we say, a career trajectory destined for success. It was just not. It's just a bullshit argument.
I'm glad that we got that on record fairly early on, because look, we don't really need to react to the rest of this. That's pretty much the whole argument. Nonetheless, we will, because it's really, really funny.
How many more workers will lose their jobs because of your economic incompetence?
This
Did
is
that hurt?
a party without one skerrick of moral compass. Bitter enemies and aggressive rivals for Kevin Rudd and Malcolm Turnbull.
Can we just get this on the record? Chris Kenny looks funny.
You could say that. I couldn't possibly comment.
Well, I will continue to say that a lot in this reaction.
Politics is not a destination, it's a journey. And you look at their journey, a lot of similarities. Rudd and Turnbull, and they've landed pretty well in the same spot now.
What I really love about having Latham provide commentary in this program is how on earth can you have someone like Latham speaking with any skerrick of credibility when you morph from being the leader of the Parliamentary Labor Party federally, the alternative Prime Minister of Australia, to lurching down the food chain of life to become the leader of one nation in the New South Wales Parliament? How does that has never happened before in Australian political history, that someone could undertake, shall I say, that intellectual migration, this journey of rank expediency to end up in Hanson land, for God's sake. And the good old boys at Sky think this adds to the moral lustre of their commentary.
Yes.
Of course, apart from Peter Beattie, apart from a whole range of failed Liberal Party staffers who now masquerade as News Corporation journalists. Apart from that, I think the program's got a lot of integrity.
And you know what else is incredible? I think It's mostly Latham in this that is trying to prosecute this case of, I mean, really, Rudd has no loyalty to his party whatsoever.
That's right. And Latham's got as much loyalty as he went and joined another party. Oh, by the way, I should add this. My dear brother Greg actually ran against me in the 2013 election as a Senate candidate. So let's, there's a few little questions of detail here, by the way, that should just be nuanced in the commentary.
Yeah, I'm sure there's even bad brushstrokes in the Mona Lisa. We're really just nitpicking here.
Well, it's true. And given we've had the MasterChef intro, and now we've had the ingredients laid out, and all the chefs now neatly arranged.
Yes.
Let's just see what...
With surprise judge.
We want to see what culinary creation emerges from this. Bum.
Isn't this creepy? What has happened here? Have they just gone on your Facebook and taken a bunch of photos that you've put up and then put them in frames? That's not your house?
That's not my house. But also, I like the man-eating plant, which has been put in the middle here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have plants in bottles. Maybe that's Chris Kenny's personal pot plant, where he keeps tarantulas inside. But that's certainly not our place.
We definitely speak to the budget of this documentary.
It's down there at what I described the bargain basement level. So.
Yeah, it really is.
Tell us about those similarities. Kevin Rudd's upbringing would have been a much tougher one than Malcolm Turnbull's, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think their childhoods are defined by the loss of a parent, the loss of parental love.
So this is Latham, the parental psychologist at play. Kind, gentle, sensitive. Mark Latham, the bloke who decked that Sydney taxi driver. That bloke, yeah. Thanks, Mark, appreciate it.
Hey, rappers have soft sides too, But also, it's incredible because in this part, they just keep saying, I guess, psychological tea leaf reading. It really is this thing of, the reason that Rudd was so motivated in life is because he had a rough upbringing. And it's the same with Malcolm Turnbull. But you just know if you guys had good upbringings, the response would be like, they had really good upbringings. So they really wanted to live up to their parents' standards. It's just whatever happened in the past is the reason that you guys went into politics.
This is the whole subscience of Murdoch's Sky Television sort of pseudo-analysis, and you see it in so much of their print media coverage as well. Never ever deal with the world of facts, because that is problematic for the entire creaking edifice of the Murdoch, let's call it intellectual project. Instead, infer about those who oppose you a whole range of things about their motivations and their character, which are only accessible, of course, if you're in the business of pop psychology. Now, I'm sure Chris went through the airport bookstore, plucked out a book on pop psychology, me and my pop plant and how we feel about each other, and that gave him a degree at the University of Southern Texas United for $3.50 online on how to analyze other people's psychology. As opposed to this boring old field called fact and verifiable fact, and something which Sky News junked a long time ago, like its sister station Fox in the United States, which is evidence. Evidence is not a big feature of this program.
It seems to be a common theme, not just in the Murdoch press, just in the press in general, is psychoanalyzing you with people that don't have a degree in psychology.
Yeah, it's kind of...
It's so much content.
It's kind of odd. I have a pretty simple life philosophy, which is I kind of believe in a fair go and fairness for all. I see a lot of unfairness around the place, and in my life so far I've tried to do something about that. End of story. That's kind of it. But there's something deeper lurking in there that I was unaware of, which these guys have finally brought to my attention. Thanks, boys. I really appreciate it.
I think both of them were brought up in an environment, from my observation of them, where they were told that they were special and that they could achieve anything that they wanted to achieve. And to that extent, both of them had somewhat overindulged childhoods and were not balanced in their characters. And that can be a very, very destabilising thing when they're introduced into what is a team sport, that is politics.
I think that's hilarious. I don't ever remember being told I was special by anybody. It was kind of special to have your Vegemite sandwiches in the morning in my place where I grew up. That was what was special.
That was your childhood. Let's have a look into Nick's. Nick went to Knox.
Is he a Knox boy?
Yes, he's a Knox boy, and he's sitting there going, I think that Rudd had this sort of born to rule mentality.
My dad just died like that because I actually got along with him well. As I sometimes say to Kevin, we were both the mistakes of the family, you know, so...
No one saw Kevin Rudd's genesis and rise at closer quarters than the man who grew up with him, older brother Greg.
That's me, that's Kevin. I was brought up in the same room as Kevin.
How accurate is that reenactment?
That kid's not me. I've got no idea who that kid is jumping on the bed. And by the way, I never had a post to the Roman Empire or any empire. I had a few maps though of Britain, Ireland, Scotland. You know why?
Why?
Because we were studying British history at school. I didn't know where anything was.
Yeah.
So I thought having a map showing you where things were was good. Is that nerdy?
Well, let's play on and see what their interpretation of that was.
Fascinated with the rise and fall of empires. How you get authority, how you keep authority, and how to rise through those systems. How do you become a leader? With the absolute 100% belief that if he got there, he would make the world a better place.
So his rendition of history is that you had maps of Britain up because you were power hungry. Your rendition of it was that you didn't know where it was.
Yeah, I needed some geography help, actually. By the way, Greg was never at home during all this period of my life. He was off doing other things.
Okay.
Anyway,
yeah.
that's just life. Yeah, that's what brothers say about brothers, I suppose.
Well, I'm trusting Greg on this one, just so you know.
Okay, Wonder Greg.
Politics is about power.
He was sort of a gatekeeper for the Goth government. Famously, taking a line from Confucian tradition, he had his desk raised. He had a platform built in the office, and people who came to see him had a chair lower down on the floor level, so everyone had to look up to him as if he were the emperor.
I gotta know, is it true? Because if it is, that's boss.
That's just a bull-faced bullshit lie. I've never heard that in my life before.
Okay.
So it's certainly not true. Maybe I should have brought in a platform for Chris to stand on when he came to see me. I'm not sure, but I never had...
Because that's what I was thinking. Is he a short man?
I got no idea. I've never really... I'm not heightist by instinct. and as for elevating your desk because it's in the Confucian classics, here's a challenge for you, Chris. Which chapter in the Confucian classics deals with the height of your desk? It's just so much manufactured bullshit. This, by the way, is the same Chris Mitchell who, in a book only a couple of years ago, began his chapter about yours truly by saying, and the last weird time we met was in a sauna on the top floor of the Intercontinental Hotel in Sydney. Only problem with that is there is no sauna on the top floor of the Intercontinental Hotel in Sydney, and we certainly didn't meet in a sauna. I don't find that attractive.
Well, speak for yourself. Yeah.
And frankly, that once again is just 100% roll gold bullshit. And that's why he was such a success in News Limited.
See, that's what I was thinking. That, just so everyone knows, that is the guy that used to be the editor of The Australian?
Yeah. So he was the hench person under Rupert and the boys in reflecting the ideological line of where Rupert wanted to take the world. Also, his line about his child with Christine Jackman, whom he subsequently divorced, Therese and I were asked by Christine to become the godparents of the kid, not by him. And in deference to Christine, that's what we did.
Right.
So that's his kind
curious
of
about that.
creative overlay in terms of the actual reality of what unfolded. But this line about the desk, for God's sake.
It is creative though. It's very
creative.
specific. It's kind of just like saying Kevin Rudd had a smaller brother on his shoulder that was sort of an attached fetus, if you will.
So here's the little challenge for Chris. Find any member of my staff from that entire period in the Queensland government who will provide you with any evidence that that was true. It's just bullshit.
It's cool because it just sounds so true because it's so specific. But I guess if you are the head of the Australian, you kind of know what works after a while. That's your whole job. Did that stick? Did that stick? Yeah, the desk thing stick. We'll go with that.
Well, these guys just get used to getting away with blue murder. You know, if you tell a lie often enough, their ultimate judgment of its news value is whether it sticks, not whether it's true or not. And that's just utter fabrication. But that's an insight into the man who used to be the head of Murdoch's media operation in Australia, effectively. So what does that say about the moral universe?
I still think you should have done it, though. Just saying.
You mean
like,
elevate the desk?
Yeah, historically.
You think I've got a height problem? Sorry.
No, look, I've never...
Straighten up here.
You need some booster cushions
could you
there?
just
Or?
come down a bit?
Yeah. No worries, man.
I don't have a problem with heightism.
And I want to say there is no prouder job in the world than anybody can occupy than being the Prime Minister of this country.
How did you feel watching John Howard cry on the night? Come on, it must have been pretty good.
I didn't. I wasn't watching. I was actually going through the numbers in the individual seats in our own tally room in Brisbane. So I didn't watch Mr. Howard's concession. But by that stage, we'd actually spoken on the phone, and he'd conceded to me over the phone. So we had quite a civilised conversation. Yeah, it's a difficult thing, losing an election. He lost one. He actually lost his own seat. 6 years later, I lost an election. So it's a very human moment.
I was hoping for some more Schadenfreude, but okay.
Howard always had a kind of a love affair with Australia and Australian people in much the same way Bob Hawke did. But I'm not really sure that Kevin or Malcolm like Australian people much at all.
Do you feel exposed? Do you feel exposed?
Well, just he's peered through the inner recesses of my soul and just that one sentence. I mean, how can this guy play the couch psychologist, really? For God's sake. I grew up on a farm in rural Queensland. You know, I lived in a town with 100 or 200 people. I went to a country state school, and I then went to university. I mean,
but you seem to be skirting the question. Do you hate Australians?
For the reasons I've just articulated, no. I actually love this country deeply, passionately. And I have this fraud stand up there and opine about who really loves Australians and who really doesn't love Australians. Get back to your psychologist couch, Chris. I mean, for God's sake. I think where Chris has got this one wrong is I love Australians, but I really hate the Australian.
Right. Well, I can see how he got it mixed up.
I think he got that mixed up, you know. It's his kind of excuse for a newspaper that really, you know, upsets my moral universe. Australian people, pretty good people. And I've seen a few bunches of people around the world. I've been around the place a lot. No place you'd rather be than this country, and there's no finer people than our lot.
Well, I expect a correction from Mr. Mitchell in his paper.
Yeah, we'll be waiting for that sometime in the 21st century. Sort of, it'll roll through into print.
Yeah.
Start to realise it's not what you thought it was.
One little sidebar that most people forget is the Kevin O. Lemon ad that was running in Canberra the night before Kevin Rudd was brought down. I thought that ad was so effective and probably swung some votes in the Labor Party caucus.
We found a vulnerability with Rudd. It didn't take long for the Australian public to sort of see through him. Now, you could see that he was, you know, a mile wide and sort of an inch deep in terms of conviction and really lacked authenticity. But that stuff takes a while to sort of seep through to the consciousness of the voter. And I think when that started to come off, when Rudd's gloss started to come off, we felt it would come off fast, and I think that's where the Kevin O' ad was so effective.
It looked good. It sounded good. But it's all gone sour. It's a lemon. Kevin O'.
Once again, I'm just cut to the quick by Credlin, the person with the ultimate credibility in Australian politics, herself as a long-standing Liberal Party apparatchik, now masquerading as a News Corporation journalist and commentator. Must admit, I don't even remember seeing this ad. I was told it was running, but I don't remember seeing it. And I think with Credlin, you just got to ask yourself this question. How much credibility does she have? This is a woman who had to apologise publicly, humiliatingly, on Sky Television for lying through her teeth about the petition that was put together by myself and supported by 500,000 Australians when she said that we were data harvesting. Lie, 100% lie. 1,000% lie, and her lawyers told her she had to apologise, otherwise she would have copped a massive defamation suit. So, you know, when you get someone like it's just a paid, hired political gun like Credlin, they're going to say anything. That's just what they do.
Mm. What do you think about the resemblance of the lemon?
I think it's a dead spit.
Yeah. I'm really seeing double here.
I really think that's me. You know, and I just need to adjust the hair a bit. So, yeah, that's it. That's kind of got it. Yeah. You know something? The other great thing about this ad and Credlin's commentary is that this is Credlin saying, I, Credlin, am really clever for producing this Credlin ad. This is what we call Credlin modesty.
Credlin taking credit. I do also like the fact...
Credlin credibly taking credit.
Yeah. Yes.
Think about it.
I did actually have to think about that for a second.
Good.
But also, yeah, first off, have to point out, do really like the fact that he is making fun, Chris Kenny is making fun of someone's shape of their head. The bowling ball. I mean, look, every time I've been on so far, I have really restrained myself from just pausing and saying, come on, like, can we just point this out? It's so spherical.
The Chris Kenny noggin.
The Chris Kenny noggin.
The bowling ball.
The bowling ball.
Where are the 3 holes?
It's probably his eyes and his mouth.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, I don't reckon. Size 12.
16.
Yeah, look heavy. Yeah, right, because of his mighty brain. Yes.
Move on.
Mr Turnbull wants it passed, but a third of his party room doesn't, including his Senate leader, Nick Minchin.
The Senate overwhelmingly rejected this abomination in August. It should do so again.
At the time, I was Malcolm Turnbull's chief of staff, and at his behest, I rang Rudd's office.
What is the budget for this show?
Is this fair income? Is this Chris Kenny superimposed seriously into the House of Representatives?
Yeah.
So this is the ultimate Kenny political orgasm, that he in fact has been elected to the House of Representatives. Only problem was the Liberal Party would never endorse him for anything, including, you know, the Wangaratta Council. You know, they just would never, just refuse to endorse him. I mean, this is so funny. It's just off the charts. Come on.
I really hope that he watches that, because I bet you that comment's got to cut deep.
That's...
Would the PM meet the opposition leader? Try to thrash out a deal. Get it done before an internal climate revolt claimed Turnbull. Rudd refused.
Big mistake, because if Malcolm Turnbull, if his offerings were accepted and Kevin Rudd did a deal with Turnbull on an emissions trading scheme, Turnbull would have been the leader.
Just to point out to everybody, Switzer, I know that they put ABC radio host at the bottom to try and give him some sort of credibility, but he was on the staff of Brendan Nelson.
Well, think about this little trifecta so far. We've got Kenny, Liberal Party staffer. We have...
At least that was for Howard.
Credlin, Liberal Party staffer. For Abbott, much less forgivable. Switzer, Liberal Party staffer for Nelson, utterly unforgivable. And so all three masquerading as independent commentators. For God's sake, this is just roll goal propaganda. By the way, on the substance of this, which is about negotiating with Turnbull, Penny Wong, fully authorised by me as the Minister for Climate Change at the time, every day negotiating with Turnbull and McFarlane to produce a deal on the carbon price, the carbon pollution reduction scheme, and we yielded many, many, many points in order to get a compromise agreement. We did, and they still rolled Turnbull in the party room because that's what they were determined to do.
Right.
So once again, it's just factual bullshit.
And also really strange that it's just a bunch of staffers bitching on air. What you'd imagine they do in the corridors anyway, but it's from 10 years ago.
But you know, people like Switzer and co, they're all out there with the daggers ready to shove into Malcolm's back anyway. I mean, they were just looking for a pretext to get rid of him because they didn't see him as authentically far right enough for the far-right Liberal Party that they'd become.
They were both early adopters of social media, both loved a selfie. Why?
It suited their personalities. The selfie suited their personalities.
Can we just... I just wanted you to notice something there, Rod. Do you see that?
What's that?
They got his name wrong.
Malcolm Turnbull.
I'm pretty sure that what they've done is I think that what's happened there is that they've recreated those posts. So obviously they've misspelled the name. No one's noticed. And they've put this up as their big, massive piece for the year.
So this is the high-quality production team from Sky News, Murdoch Media Enterprise, who can't spell?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well, then again, they did seamlessly put in Chris Kenny into a debate between you and Malcolm Turnbull in Parliament.
That's like...
It took us a moment. We almost slipped by us. You're very wily, Kenny.
It's like a scene from an ABC puppet show. You know, you see the puppet sort of move across the screen.
I know.
You know, the Thunderbirds. That's Kenny. Kenny's one of the Thunderbirds. I didn't realise that. It's hilarious.
Isn't it amazing knowing that this little hodgepodge piece that we've put together here probably has a higher budget than this?
This is the Murdoch Media Enterprise. I suppose if you just paid $150 million for a new yacht, which is Lachlan's reported to have done,
yeah.
You don't have loose change to actually fund a full production unit. I suppose, like it's an austerity drive. You shut down a whole bunch of Queensland provincial newspapers and you reduce the production budget at Sky because you've got to cross-subsidise the yacht somehow. I mean, for God's sake, yeah.
What do you think about their point that you love selfies?
Well, when Peter Beattie describes others using the media to promote a particular cause, let's just freeze frame on Peter Beattie for one moment, the self-proclaimed media tart of Australian politics. That's how Beattie describes himself, the media tart of Australian politics. So look, Peter's Peter, and everyone in Queensland knows he's a media tart.
Yeah, including himself.
Yeah,
and
that's just the self-descriptor. So,
right.
And also, let's remember here we have Beattie himself, a Sky columnist or a Sky presenter or a Sky panellist for many, many years. So it's not as if he comes to this program with a great tradition of journalistic objectivity, for God's sake.
Isn't that incredible that they couldn't get one? Like really, everybody that there is on this documentary has either worked for Sky News or has worked for the Liberal Party.
That's true.
Apart from your brother. So 9 out of 10, I think.
Probably, yeah. I haven't looked at the full galaxy of stars yet, but we should.
They keep getting brighter. I mean, surely Chris Kenny does selfies. Can we just look at that? Yeah, here's one. Check it out.
There's a story of leaving the 2015 Midwinter Ball, and Malcolm's, very depressed and very upset, and he's been caned by Alan Jones on 2GB and caned by Andrew Bolt in the papers, and he comes up to me, puts his head on my shoulders, almost in tears, actually quite depressed, and said, "What is your company doing to me?" And trying to change the subject, I remarked at what a beautiful jacket he was wearing, and it was clearly a handmade jacket. It's beautiful. And he sort of instantly sparked up and preened about the jacket and said, "Kevin gave me this. It's a present from Kevin." Which sort of struck me as very interesting position for him, you know. So this is before he gets the leadership. He's lost the opposition leader's job, and he and Kevin are now on a unity ticket, which said a bit to me.
I need to know your angle.
This is so mad it's off the Richter scale. It's just stunning. This is the same Chris Mitchell who is written in black and white that he and I met in a sauna when there was no sauna. And we certainly didn't meet in one. The same Chris Mitchell who says that I had props under my desk when I was Director General of the Queensland Cabinet Office because that's what the Confucian classics told me to do. Again, in the absence of evidence, more bullshit. And now this one about Malcolm Turnbull's jacket. For God's sake, I wouldn't know what jacket anybody was wearing, let alone have any interest in clothing, demonstrably, and let alone think that it was cool or smart to give someone else a jacket, let alone have one made. That's just utter fabrication on Mitchell's part. But, you know, fabrication gets rewarded in the News Corporation stable.
Wow, that's incredible. So...
and I assume Mitchell, always checking his sources, has subsequently gone to Malcolm to confirm the veracity of what he claims here. That in fact I gave Turnbull a jacket, a handmade jacket, which I had crafted for Turnbull when Turnbull, I presume, was Prime Minister, and by which stage I was in the United States as head of an American think tank in 2015. I mean, there's a conspiracy there somewhere. I'm just trying to thread it together. In Chris's mind, that is.
Yep, yep. But also, I really don't know what he's trying to say here. Is he just trying to say that you guys had such a close relationship that you knew each other's suit sizes?
I think he's inferring that we're both into cross-dressing. I'm not sure. But,
Right. So first off, it was that pretty much he's saying that you were hitting on him, and now he's saying that you were hitting on Turnbull.
It's just so wacky. It's funny. It's just really very funny.
Do you want to call Turnbull and see what he reckons?
Hang on, I'll just check if Malcolm's there.
Well, actually, we are just adding more evidence to his claim than that conversational.
I've just checked with Malcolm, and he said he got the jacket in Beijing several years before 2015, and he joked with Mitchell on the night of the ball that, oh yes, yeah, Kevin gave me this one, and this idiot has taken it as gospel rather than being the joke that it was.
He's the editor. He's the best they've got. Getting to the bottom of things, if he can understand what the bottom of things is.
I just see two really bright, intelligent men who are running around still consumed by the fact that they lost the job. They're blaming everyone else but themselves, whereas they've got a contribution to make to this country. They're smart enough to do it. I'd urge them to do it. I'd say to Scott Morrison, Scott, for God's sake, find them something constructive to do. Do what the Americans do. Use our prime ministers, use Abbott, whoever else for the country. And if they don't want to do that, then both of them are wealthy enough to make a contribution in their own way, and they should do that. Be positive.
This is the same Peter Beattie, by the way, who has routinely attacked every single Labor Premier and every single Labor Prime Minister apart from himself. Because Peter doesn't kind of like people being bigger than Peter.
Right.
That's kind of who Peter is, apart from being a self-proclaimed media tart of the 21st century.
And also, just the fact that you have been negotiating between the Chinese and the Biden administration to smooth out the gears, I suppose, between those two coming together and talking about climate change. And this guy's sitting there being like, you know, you really need to make some kind of contribution instead of sitting around in your mansion all day, Kevin.
Well, the bottom line is, I mean, the inference there from Beattie is that I've kind of been unemployed since I left the prime ministership. I
Well,
haven't
you
stopped.
dress like it, but
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's kind of. This is my high class hoodie. I'd have you know.
The Target one.
And I modelled actually that jacket for Malcolm on this same fabric, same style. It's the only jacket actually that you could see at the media ball that year. It had its own built-in hoodie at the back. So
smart casual.
But the thesis that we haven't had something productive to do, or I haven't had something productive to do since leaving office, is just palpably false. I mean, running an American think tank in New York for the last 5 to 6 years, focusing on US-China relations and focusing on climate change. And we spend most of our time officially or unofficially engaging the administration in Washington, the Chinese government in Beijing, and other relevant governments on these sorts of challenges. That's not exactly my definition of being underemployed.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Peter's been doing a fantastic job running the NRL.
Hey, sport's at the heart of this nation. You just expose yourself for hating Australia, right?
Yeah, that's because PB couldn't work out who the Sharks were, and he was in charge of the NRL. Bit of a problem, Pete. Even nerds like me know who the Sharks are. It's Cronulla. It's Como's team, and they have a blue uniform.
That's so good. That guy's telling you to straighten up and fly right.
Exactly. Well done, Pete.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, it seems to have been noted. So.
Well done for the career counselling, Pete. By the way, the hidden fact about Pete is that in the days of the Goss government's single biggest public-private critic of everything Wayne Goss did was Peter Beattie. Opposed him becoming leader of the Labor Party, attacked him from within while he was Premier of Queensland, and sought desperately to undermine every act of his as Premier. And now we have moral Pete providing moral counsel to the rest of the political class. I think it's hilarious. Well done, Pete.
I know that Julie Bishop and Kevin Rudd were very close. I mean, Kevin Rudd, after he lost the Prime Ministership, would almost on a weekly basis catch up with Julie Bishop. She would often come to leadership meetings in the morning when we were in opposition and retail X or Y from Kevin Rudd, and you know, staff like me would be charged to sort of go and look at the document or look at the speech or look at a travel record, etc., and sort of join the dots. And 9 times out of 10, it was ammunition for the opposition to the detriment of the Prime Minister, then Prime Minister Gillard. Here's my challenge to Credlin and to the human bowling ball, which is ask Julie Bishop, is it true or not? Because I know it's false, Julie Bishop knows it's false, and Julie Bishop has told me that she has told Kenny before this program went to air it was false.
And they put it on anyway?
They put it on anyway. But that's what you do with your news corporation. You swagger around the place like some latter-day Sicilian mafia operation because you've got power, because you've got resources, and you've got influence. You can get away with blue murder. Look at all the lies we've been fed today.
I'll add a challenge.
What's the challenge?
Can she score a perfect game with Kenny's head? Can you get 300?
There's a lot in recent times. Malcolm, in his period as Prime Minister, was fearful of the Murdoch media beast in terms of what it could do to us.
So it's a bit rich to blame News Corp for their own failings. When they were Prime Ministers, they copped it from all ends. The ABC, the Herald, the Age, and News Corp. It's a very simplistic way of explaining their failures.
Is it really a simplistic way of explaining failures that the entire press was against you? I mean, I guess it's because it's a short sentence, simple.
Well, as my favourite moral philosopher, Homer Simpson, has said, when you look at Switzer, you see a real live intellectual. And real live intellectuals are supposed to do this, read books. So if Switzer actually read my autobiography and my account of why I lost the Labor Party leadership and why we subsequently lost the 2013 election, you'll see that there are a whole bunch of factors I point to in terms of things I got wrong, things I got right, as well as the behaviours of others, including News Corporation, as part of the mix. But what he purports there to be my view about the reasons for political loss in 2013 or loss of leadership in 2010 is just simplistic bullshit, and he knows it if he bothered to read. But being an intellectual, of course, he doesn't need to read.
And isn't it incredible that this is on Sky News, they're still attacking you and Malcolm Turnbull despite you being out of office for 10 years, or well over 10 years now. No, not, well, you came back. But that's what's going down there. And also, if we're to quote Homer Simpson again, the whole thing is just filled with all of these tactics of getting a speech of you and then making it all a current affair and putting it in slow motion. So to quote Homer again, but listen to the music, he's evil.
That's right. Yeah, you bring on the spooky music, and once you got the spooky music, then you have a really spooky Chris Kenny emerge across the screen into the Parliament building, fulfilling, of course, his ultimate political dream of actually being in the Parliament.
Yeah, I know. And everyone's quiet because of how awesome I am.
That's true. But what's the sub-thesis here? The thesis really in all of this is as follows. Turnbull and myself have argued that Murdoch is a media monopoly in this country, abuses the media monopoly powers that he has in order to bring about political changes which Murdoch wants, either for ideological or commercial reasons. That's our argument. Their response to that argument is not to answer any of those challenges, but to engage in character assassination. And with spooky music. And to have, the Thunderbird in chief, the human bowling ball, stalk across the stage. Go figure.
We were thinking about this because we just watched it preliminarily. The premise of this documentary is to ask 10 people that all hate you what they think about you. I think that if somebody made that documentary about me, it would be a hell of a lot more damning than it is to both you and Malcolm Turnbull. I mean, what's the smoking gun that they have here? That you bought him a suit, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, that I bought him a suit, which Malcolm has subsequently told me he bought in Beijing 3 years before then.
And because you've been there.
Because I've been to China and I've met Chinese people, there's the beginning of a conspiracy between the Chinese, Malcolm, and myself. Think about it.
You know what? I bet you if Chris Mitchell watched that, he probably would be thinking about it, being like, yes, more of the dots are lining up.
That's right. Quietly, patiently waiting for the neurons to collide.
Sky News presents 10 failures with chips on their shoulders, trying to explain why they don't have chips on their shoulders. In fact, it's the two guys who reach the height of public service and achieve pretty much their dreams in life who have chips on their shoulders.
That would be a much better name for this documentary than Men in the Mirror, wouldn't it? Bowl of chips.
Bowl of chips. That's what the end is saying, bowl of chips. That's good. I like it.
I'm Paul Murray, and if you want to grow your business and market your brand with affordable and effective advertising solutions, then News Re-Engage is a must-attend event for you. At News Re-Engage, our marketing specialists will work with you to build a tailor-made marketing campaign with a huge portfolio of trusted media environments to engage your audience. The end result? Not just solid growth, but most importantly, a strong return on your investment. So register now. newsrsvp.com.au.
Who do they get to do that ad? The guy that crafted Weight Watchers? What was that?
Well, Murray's very charismatic. I mean, he's...
Clearly.
He's got a lot going for him. A lot. And, but what's really funny about that is here we are watching this News Corp character assassination exercise against Turnbull and yours truly in a program and an organisation which says we keep separate news from editorial, from our commercial operations, all lumped together in one seamless blob in the middle of this program. And these guys have no sense of irony. News Re-Engage News is just disengaged from every regional newspaper in Australia by shutting them down. But again, you've got to manage the budget, because you've got $150 million out there to build the private super yacht for Lachlan. You've got to save money somehow by shutting down all these regional newspapers. But it does take chutzpah on Paul Murray's part to say, having disengaged from local newspapers and regional newspapers right across Australia, we're now running a campaign to re-engage and give us more money. Go figure. It's kind of odd, isn't it?
It is really odd. It's also amazing. Can you imagine that power? You know the spruiker that stands outside chemists talking about the amazing deals inside?
Yes, I've seen those guys. Yeah, when I was...
You got to feel sorry for this guy. The fact that Lachlan is able to say, all right, get out there and spruik. That's pretty much that. He may as well have had the candy cane striped jumpsuit with the little hat being like, step right up, folks. This is how you win big in advertising.
Well, you remember the journalistic triumph of Paul Murray. It was when he got that nanobite of time outside the Oval Office with his political hero of the century, Donald Trump, on the back of a ScoMo tour of Washington in the last year or so. And that was the peak of Paul Murray's journalistic career, that moment in the afterburn of a Donald Trump shadow.
And now he has to pay for it.
That's true.
He has to make that money back for that tour that he paid on company dime.
Well,
you got to say, it's a tightly run operation.
Paul Murray's career each day is sort of one rolling series of ethical dilemmas which he answers before the question is ever asked. By saying, yes, sir. How high do you want me to jump, sir? No, sir. That's the funny thing about this whole series. You know something? This whole program is that, guess who's come back to live in Australia? Lachlan. Lachlan Murdoch, within the last month or two, has arrived back in Australia, re-established his family in Australia, kids in local schools, so he's setting up shop in Sydney. He's left LA. So one of the underlying dynamics of this Sky News Fest in this program is the managing director of Sky, Boris Whitaker, sucking up to Lachlan, who's back in town. This internal competitive dynamic between Whitaker, who runs Sky News, ex of the Australian, ex of the Daily Telegraph, Chris Dorr, the other ogre from Central Casting, who runs the Australian these days since Chris Mitchell was moved out. And then you've got Ben English, this guy who runs the Daily Telegraph, all in this sort of giant internal competition for affection from the heir apparent who's now moved back to Oz. What better way to do it? Run a program like this, which establishes clearly, objectively, and based on all the evidence, that both Malcolm Turnbull and myself are sons of the Antichrist.
I still really don't understand the theme of this entire documentary. Granted, I haven't seen all of it, but what is the point of this whole man in the mirror facade? Why are they trying to link you guys together?
Well, I think it's just utterly defamatory, because what they're arguing is that Turnbull and myself are two sides of the same coin. That's quite wrong. That's quite untrue. Turnbull and I are absolutely as one on the question of the Murdoch media monopoly. We're not two sides of the same coin at all. That's completely defamatory, boys. Try harder next time.
So really, it's just saying to Lachlan Murdoch, here's your two enemies, here's their heads on a pike.
Yeah, sort of thing. And here are we, good, eager News Corporation Boy Scouts, doing whatever we're told from above, and to produce stuff which masquerades as news and an independent commentary. That's kind of what they do. So
I just didn't realise it was so lazy, because they have been advertising this for 2 weeks straight about Chris Kenny's expose that will shock and amaze you, which is the same talking points we've been saying for the last 6 years.
Did you see the billboard in Brizzy, which is above the sex shop? I
saw the sex shop. I didn't Wasn't paying attention to the board.
That's your personal problem.
Yeah.
There's a billboard above the sex shop, which is of this this program. So it's actually further depressed rentals in that area. But you're right, that's thrown all this effort into it. Next time, boys, why don't you engage Malcolm and myself as consultants? We could do a better job in taking the mickey out of Malcolm and Kevin than you guys have.
Don't you think?
Yeah. I could have found 10
lazy.
I could have found 10 much better enemies.
And I'd have to say, you know, to be fair to him, you know, on his good days, like Malcolm, he can be terribly good company. He can be very amusing and good fun, but can be brutal when he feels he's crossed.
Talk about brutalising. This from the former editor of The Australian, who made it his professional business to brutalise anybody who objected to his particular worldview or Murdoch's particular worldview. He would single them out and then brutalise them by the convergence of reporting with editorial day after day after day, week after week after week, until he could smash them. And that is so much part of the Murdoch craft, and you see it in their British papers, you see it in the Australian papers, you see it in the New York Post, and Mitchell loves it. He loves the exercise of political power through the bully pulpit of being the editor of Murdoch's paper, The Australian.
I really like that as evidence to the fact that you are brutal, they are highlighting all of the front pages of them brutalising you.
One thing you learn about Mitchell is that he does not have a deep sense of irony. Like zero. Well done, Chris. If you're talking about thugs and bullies, Kenny, head kicker from Central Casting, that's just what they do. That's part of the Murdoch stable. Remember what Pemberthy, then editor of the Daily Telegraph, said to me years ago when I was out having a drink with him at a bar one night. I said, why did you monster X, I can't remember who it was, on the front page of the Daily Telegraph that day? To which his swaggering reply was, quote, because we can, unquote. That is the essence of the Murdoch Australian culture that you see day in, day out, because we can, because we actually run this country, because we're so powerful and ugly that we can get away with it. And if you dare stick your head up and try and say no to us, then we will take your head off, snap your carotid artery, and then smudge it into the carpet. Just an example to others.
Yeah.
In case you missed the detail.
Yeah.
The other great thing about this mob is this. Here we are in the midst of a debate about the exercise of the Murdoch media monopoly. None of those questions are answered anywhere in this particular program, even addressed, even listed as vaguely relevant or legitimate to the campaign which Malcolm Turnbull and myself are running. But what have we got in this? It's not just a random Sky television program on Turnbull and myself. It's an entire Murdoch media production across their print media, The Australian. It's in the Daily Telegraph in Sydney, the Herald Sun, the Brisbane Courier Mail, the Adelaide Advertiser, articles all over the place. It's run as a nationwide campaign. That's because they run as a political party. They see Turnbull and I as opposed to their political interests, their corporate interests, their ideological interests, and they're mobilising a campaign to destroy us through character assassination.
It's really cool though, because pretty much this is a signal that you're being effective.
Well, I find it kind of interesting. These guys are obviously rattled because here they are dedicating resources to taking on one bloke who ceased being Prime Minister 3 or 4 years ago, and myself who ceased being Prime Minister 7 years ago. What's all that about? So methinks, as Shakespeare once wrote, methinks they doth protest too much.
Yes. And you know what else I like about this? I'm pretty sure that your reaction to their big production piece over the last year will get more views than the production piece, and that is going to really piss Chris Kenny off. And I, for one, am very happy knowing that.
But it's all about power. They've got power. They don't want to surrender it. They like it the way it is. And they're sending a message to the rest of the body politic. If you take us on, we'll do to you what we are trying to do to Rudd and Turnbull in this program. That's what it's all about.
You know what's really interesting as well? I think it is actually having the exact opposite effect of what they intended. I think that both your view and, just the public's view of both you and Turnbull is, if anything, getting more favourable.
Well, I don't know what the punters think. We haven't polled it. I don't think News Corporation would run a poll on what people think about News Corporation.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you live in the world of empirical evidence. I kind of live in this Sky News world of just being like, yeah, I feel like people just like the Kevin 07 shirt again. Seems to sell for a little more on eBay.
Yeah, but the bottom line is, look, this is kind of a rancid little oligarchy, I think, teetering towards the end of its time in the sun. That's Murdoch. And they're just hanging on as hard as they can, and they don't like the spotlight of truth being shone upon them. And this, all these people who cling on at the sides in the hope of picking up a bit of an advantage on the way through, give us a little slot on Sky News, make us a commentator, give us $1.50 for showing up, for God's sake. It's pretty
That's
demeaning.
really sad, isn't it? This is the 21st century equivalent, I suppose, of just sitting there with your hand out for bread. That's really what's happening there. It's just a bunch of beggars.
But these guys are running the biggest media corporation in the country. And if you've got an interest in being in the media, on the media, or working for the media, then it has an effect. People tend to watch their P's and Q's and not to offend the Murdoch beast. People don't like being attacked in programs like this. I mean, for me, it's kind of water off a duck's back because it's happened to me 1,000 times. But if you're a person who's not normally a political combatant and you go out there and this happens to you, then people go, I don't want to do it. And that's what the Murdoch thugs know. And they're sending a daily message to the body politic, don't misbehave or we'll come after you.
If I was in charge of this, I would have just spent all of the budget on waiting for you to go for a walk outside, and then I'd chuck an egg at you in the hope that I could film you go, what the f***? And then that'd be it. I think that would be more effective than what they've done here. They have nothing.
But, they would have waited in vain, because as you know, I never swear. Much. At least not really.
And I assume you probably just would have caught the egg in your hand, cracked it, and eaten it.
That's right. I've watched my Rocky movies.
Yeah, you needed the protein boost for the walk.
Unlike Chris Kenny, who wakes up in the morning, gets an egg out.
Yes, I missed my mouth again.
That's right. I was aiming for those 3 holes in the bowling ball that I missed.
Well, that was fun. If you want to see more content of Kevin Rudd reacting, did you enjoy it?
I did.
I think that you should start doing it on your YouTube channel because that's what the kids like. They like someone else watching TV for them.
You didn't tell me this was going on YouTube.
Are you scared of that?
It sounds very modern, and I'm not.
All right, well, stay tuned for that. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and share. You've got to get used to that. If you're stepping into the world with
likes
that.
And shares. Let's have more of it.
Yeah, right. There we go. Anyway, thanks for your time, and I really did enjoy sitting around laughing at this. It was just such a half-ass hatchet job.
It's actually been good fun. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's thanks for the entertainment, boys.
I do really like this. Pinnacle in your career of going from Prime Minister to key diplomat across the world to YouTuber.
That's true.
Yeah.
So
and oddly, I think that they do have more influence than the last two. So you finally come around.
Could well be the case. It's nice to be with you, Mr. Friendly. Could you get better socks next time?
Yeah, and I'll take my feet off your table, sorry.
Thank you.
Yep.
Please share and comment below. Comment.